Picture this for a second. You wake up, and it is just this perfectly predictable, deeply satisfying morning.
Right, the kind of morning where you feel like you have your life completely handled.
Exactly. You've got the coffee brewing, the sunlight is hitting the dining room floor in like those long, patient bands. You sit down at your desk, you align your yellow legal pad, your dependable pen is right where it always is.
It's a great feeling.
It is. You feel that calm confidence that really only comes from a 30-year career where you are the reliable one. You are the fixer. You're the one everyone calls when the multi-million-dollar projects go totally off the rails.
You're the ultimate safety net.
Yeah, exactly. And then one brief phone call just ends it all.
Which is wild because the psychological architecture of 3 decades just vanishes into thin air before the coffee even gets cold.
It really does. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is exploring the profound difference between being indispensable and being sovereign.
And we're navigating this territory using a really fascinating source.
Right. We are. We're looking at Julie Boljak's memoir of reinvention, which is called Bloom Again. That's available on Amazon right now, by the way. But we also have an exclusive look at the upcoming sequel called Now What, which is scheduled for release this June.
Which I think is a super important piece of context.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bloom, again, isn't just a standalone story about getting laid off.
Oh, not at all.
Right. It is the entry point into this highly ambitious 10-book series. It analyzes the really messy, beautiful reality of career disruption and midlife identity.
And we should probably establish the tone of the source material immediately. There is a prominent disclaimer right up front that literally says this is not another self-help book.
And reading through it, that is incredibly accurate.
Yeah, we aren't dealing with platitudes here or like
Yeah.
5 easy steps to finding your bliss. This is a forensic, almost clinical look at what actually happens when the external scaffolding of your life just totally collapses.
Well, the anatomy of a disruption is a messy thing.
Hmm.
I mean, to understand the collapse, we really have to look at the inciting incident in Chapter 1 of Bloom Again.
Yeah, where she gets the call.
Exactly.
Yep.
Julie's sitting in her reupholstered chair, which is kind of her command center, and she gets on what she assumes is a routine catch-up call.
Right.
But instead, she finds herself facing a human resources representative. In this clinical 5-minute conversation, her entire reality fractures. She is basically informed that her position is being eliminated as part of a reduction in force, or a RIF.
You know, that acronym alone, RIF, it just strips all the humanity out of the moment.
It really does.
And what stands out to me in the source material is the silence of her manager.
Oh, yeah. The manager just stays completely mute.
Right. This is someone she had worked closely with to save massive projects. They initiated the call, but then they stay entirely silent while this HR stranger delivers the blow.
Yeah.
30 years of IT project recovery experience is just reduced to a simple spreadsheet adjustment.
In that moment, it really exposes a fundamental vulnerability in how we view corporate loyalty. It highlights the ultimate flaw in the pursuit of being indispensable.
Wait, let me jump in with an analogy here because it feels like paying into an insurance policy for 30 years. Like the unwritten policy that says excellence and loyalty equals safety.
Only to find out the company quietly canceled the policy a decade ago without telling you.
Yes. But wait, I have to push back a little. We are taught from day one, usually by our parents, that if you make yourself indispensable, you are safe. So how did that become a trap?
Well, that canceled insurance policy analogy is perfect because it really gets to the heart of a generational misunderstanding. See, indispensability exists inside systems that track cost, not loyalty.
Okay, interesting.
Right, because institutions are not moral entities. They don't carry memories of what you did for them 3 years ago. They just carry metrics of what you cost them today.
Wow, yeah. That's harsh but true.
And Julie writes extensively about this sort of inherited contract she got from her parents. They worked for General Motors during a specific economic era where the compact was tangible.
Right, the era of the gold watch.
Exactly. You give the company your absolute devotion, your best years, and in exchange, the company acts as this paternalistic entity that protects you until retirement. You basically trade autonomy for absolute security.
But she inherited the devotion to that contract without inheriting the economic era that made it viable.
Exactly. In the modern corporate structure, which is all about shareholder primacy and algorithmic efficiency, that paternalistic compact has completely dissolved.
It's just gone.
Yeah. When a professional ties their entire identity to being the one who stabilizes the room, they forget that the modern system views stabilization merely as a line item.
The cognitive dissonance there has to be staggering. You operate under the assumption that you are an integral load-bearing wall in the building, but the company views you as, like, a piece of rented furniture.
That's exactly it.
But the absurdity of that spreadsheet adjustment is really only the initial shock. The source material shows that the true psychological test doesn't happen on the phone with HR.
No, it happens the next day when the adrenaline wears off.
Which brings us to the exclusive material from the upcoming June release, Now What? Because Chapter 1 dives deep into this phenomenon Julie terms the morning after clarity.
It is such a visceral concept.
It really is. It's the day after the illusion breaks. You wake up, the house looks exactly the same, the dogs still need to go outside, the physical world has not shifted an inch.
But the structural framework defining your identity is just completely gone.
Right. She describes sitting in that same command center, that reupholstered chair from her parents' house.
And for decades, just the mere act of sitting in that chair triggered this cascade of responsibility and direction. The brain literally associates the physical space with the production of solutions.
But on this specific morning, there are no 7 a.m. meetings. There is no inbox filling up with crises requiring her specific brand of triage.
Nothing. Just empty space.
And I have to say, for anyone who is exhausted, waking up with literally 0 emails and 0 meetings sounds like a dream. It sounds like a vacation.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. So why does Julie describe this moment as standing in a wide, open space without a map? Why is it treated with such a sense of dread?
Because it triggers a profound loss of orientation. Look, for a high-achieving fixer, pressure acts as an exoskeleton.
Oh, an exoskeleton. I like that.
Yeah, deadlines, stakeholder demands, ongoing crises. These external forces provide a rigid framework. It tells the professional exactly who they are, what their value is, and what they need to do at any given second.
Right, it holds them up.
Exactly. So when you remove that exoskeleton, the professional collapses inward. Stillness becomes terrifying because no one is telling you who to be.
It's like phantom limb syndrome, but for your career.
That is a great way to put it.
The brain is sending signals to a corporate structure that has already been amputated. You reach for the phone to put out a fire that isn't burning anymore.
And that phantom sensation makes the clarity feel awful. The clarity on that morning doesn't feel like a roadmap to liberation. It feels like an aggressive interruption.
It forces the realization that for 30 years, your attention always had a designated place to go.
Right. And now, the attention has nowhere to go, so it turns inward.
Which is a space most of us actively avoid. The silence is just deafening. And because that stillness is deeply uncomfortable, human biology basically demands that we try to fix the discomfort.
We reach for the tools we know.
Exactly. In Julie's case, she reaches for the legal pad to start mapping out pros and cons. She opens her laptop, pulls up her resume, and gets ready to update it.
And this is what the book identifies as the danger zone of the false fix.
The false fix.
Yeah. The instinct to immediately start fixing the situation is a trap.
Okay, let's debate this for a second, because I imagine a lot of people listening will push back here. Isn't updating your resume the absolute most responsible thing you can do after a layoff?
It seems like it.
Right. Like, severance packages have an expiration date. Mortgages do not. If I am stressed about paying my bills, why is she viewing this perfectly logical step as dangerous?
Well, the expert analysis here hinges on the distinction between anxious movement and strategic movement.
Okay, break that down.
Anxious movement is driven by the biological imperative to relieve the internal pressure of uncertainty. It is not actually about solving the problem of what you want to do with your life. It is about self-soothing.
Ah, I see.
You are reaching for the resume not because you have a clear vision for your next move, but because the physical act of typing makes you feel like you are back in control. It's an attempt to recreate what was lost just to relieve pressure.
You are basically engaging in the pantomime of productivity.
Exactly.
It's the equivalent of drinking salt water when you're dying of thirst. Like, it feels like you're doing something necessary, but you are actually accelerating the damage by just scrambling to build a replica of the cage that just ejected you.
That's a perfect analogy. Whereas strategic movement, on the other hand, requires a pause. It asks the really terrifying question, what do I actually want now?
Which is so hard to ask when you're panicked.
Right. And in the source material, as Julie's hands hover over the keyboard to update the resume, she hears this very quiet internal directive that simply says, no.
Just no.
Yes. And that moment reveals the 3 choices we all face when the structural void opens up. You can rush, you can retreat, or you can stay.
Let's unpack the mechanics of those three choices.
Well, rushing is the anxious movement we just discussed.
Yeah.
You take the first available job simply to silence the panic.
Which effectively means you're just volunteering for another layoff a few years down the line.
Exactly. Then there's retreating, which is the attempt to shrink yourself.
Yeah.
It's pretending you didn't just outgrow the corporate system.
You try to squeeze your newly expanded awareness back into a lesser version of your old role.
Right, hoping that staying small somehow keeps you safe.
And the third option? Stay.
Staying is the hardest of all. It is the conscious decision to sit in the discomfort of that morning after clarity. It means remaining in the liminal space between the old life that is definitively over and the new life that hasn't taken shape yet.
You refuse to force a decision just to alleviate the internal pressure.
Precisely. And sitting in that fire brings her to a massive turning point. She realizes the defining question is no longer, who will choose me next?
The question shifts to, am I finally willing to choose myself?
Which is huge. But answering that affirmatively requires confronting a massive cultural bias.
Yeah.
Because we operate in a society that aggressively pushes the narrative that reinvention is exclusively for the young.
Oh, absolutely. The culture loves the 25-year-old tech disruptor in a hoodie working out of a garage. But society treats midlife like the epilogue of a novel. Like the main plot is over, the character arcs are locked, and you are just tying up loose ends until you hit retirement.
But Julie's story completely dismantles that bias. Think about the facts here. We are observing a 58-year-old woman who, after being discarded by the corporate machine, sits at her dining room table and self-funds an MBA.
Wow. At 58.
Yeah, and she doesn't complete the degree because she needs a piece of paper to impress a hiring manager. She completes it as a foundational statement to herself.
It is the arithmetic of experience, really. The source material makes this great point that a 55-year-old has lived roughly 20,000 days.
20,000 days. Think about that.
That is not starting from zero. That is 20,000 days of accumulating pattern recognition, navigating complex human dynamics, surviving economic downturns, managing crises.
You aren't learning how to operate in the world anymore. You are leveraging an incredibly deep database of survival.
Exactly. It's not starting from zero, it's starting from depth.
And neurologically speaking, a veteran professional processes a crisis entirely differently than a novice. They have the cognitive maps to see the matrix of a problem. That depth is the core ingredient of professional sovereignty.
Professional sovereignty. Let's expand on that.
Sure. Sovereignty is the definitive shift from doing what you're told inside someone else's system to designing the architecture of what comes next entirely on your own terms.
But I imagine the reality of claiming that sovereignty isn't just like a glamorous flip of a switch, right? You don't just walk out of a corporate boardroom and suddenly become a Zen master of your own destiny.
Definitely not.
So what does the actual messy practice of that look like in the book?
Well, it looks deeply unglamorous at first. The text provides this brilliant story of her transition. Julie actually starts an artisanal chocolate business called Chocolate for the Spirit.
Okay, love that.
And her very first public event, the debut of her new sovereign identity, takes place at the Indiana State Fairgrounds.
Okay, for a highly respected corporate IT director, that is quite the venue change.
Right. And it wasn't even a glamorous culinary festival. It was a baby and toddler event. Yeah, she is standing in this cavernous room filled with strollers, diaper bags, exhausted parents, and she's just standing behind a table with her pink and blue ribbon boxes of chocolate.
That has to be so humbling.
It was. And the tension in the scene comes from her internal critic. She really has to confront the voice asking, is this serious enough? What would the vice presidents from my old life think if they saw me standing here?
The phantom limb is acting up again. The ego is trying to measure a new venture using the metrics of the old corporate cage.
Exactly. But her sovereignty is cemented in how she processes that voice. She recognizes that she is no longer performing for the vice presidents. She's showing up for her own work.
She didn't wait for permission or validation from her former corporate colleagues.
No, and she didn't wait until everything felt perfectly ready either. She just set up the table and stood behind her own creation.
That concept, setting up the table, it's the physical manifestation of what she calls the second spring, or blooming again.
Yes, the title of the book.
Because the first bloom of our youth is almost always driven by urgency and external validation. We are trying to prove our worth to institutions, trying to secure our place in the hierarchy.
But the second bloom, the midlife reinvention, that is driven by internal awareness and deliberate intention.
It utilizes the raw material of everything the first half of life taught you.
And that second bloom is structurally stronger because it is grounded in the visceral knowledge of your own resilience. You know you can survive the collapse of your identity.
Which means uncertainty stops being a terrifying enemy.
Exactly. You don't have to defeat it through anxious movement. Uncertainty simply becomes the environment you operate in.
We have covered some incredibly dense psychological territory today. Let's distill the core principles for everyone listening.
Good idea.
The foundational takeaway from all the sources is this profound shift in perspective regarding your own stability. The external scaffolding, your job title, your position in the hierarchy, the endless calendar of meetings, that is not your foundation.
You are your foundation.
Yes, the competence, the pattern recognition, the strength, they belong entirely to you. You are merely leasing them to the institution.
And when that lease is terminated, the resulting void is not an emergency to be solved immediately. The morning after clarity is a space to be understood.
Choosing to stay in that discomfort, resisting the urge to rush into the first available replica of your old life, that is the mechanism that unlocks true professional sovereignty.
It's a complete paradigm shift for how we should view career transition.
It really is. And honestly, you really need to explore the nuance in this full 10-book series. You can pick up Bloom Again on Amazon today. And definitely keep an eye out for the sequel, Now What, which is releasing this June.
And for listeners who want to continuously engage with these concepts, subscribing to Julie's free newsletter is highly recommended. The exact address is julies-journal.ghost.io.
Make sure you get that right, julies-journal.ghost.io.
Yeah, fresh, honest essays are published there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And the writing covers the entire spectrum of navigating midlife transitions, right? Like, one post might deconstruct the psychological weight of professional reinvention, while the next explores the experience of a Bob Dylan concert or the surprising absurdity of landscaping.
It provides such an honest look at the multifaceted reality of building a sovereign life. It serves as a consistent reminder that the messy middle of a transition is a shared human experience, not a personal failing.
Absolutely. Well, we want to leave you with a final lingering question to mull over as you go about your day. Think about the primary structure organizing your reality right now.
It could be your specific role at work, your function in your family dynamic, or just the rigid routine you follow every single morning.
Right. If that entire structure vanished before you woke up tomorrow, what is the very first action you would take? Would you instinctively rush to rebuild an exact replica of the system that just disappeared? Or would you finally dare to sit in the stillness and ask yourself what you actually want?